People of Earth. Sorry, I'm going to do like something comical then, but I don't know, like really what to say. So Ricky Gervais smart. Like, I had before I like really knew all that much about Ricky Gervais or who he was, but compared to him before then, I don't actually. Yeah, well, what I want to say, like, I think like the business of nation states and borders and so on, and like a lack of free movement of people around the globe should probably be brought to an end, seeing as though it seems to have caused nothing but trouble throughout history. I think like if nothing else can be said about that, it's probably that. We would need free movement of trade, resources, human beings to mediate these things. Of course, a better sort of global planning of infrastructure in the future. I think if we're going to get serious about things like space exploration and pushing forward, the causes of science, technology, engineering, medicine, maths, whichever you like, as the M on the end of STEM, and usher in an age of human flourishing, unimpeded by the tussling of hand in glove corporatist, supposedly democratic institutions ruling the planet via a supranational organisation, which is currently the United Nations. I suggest something more like a global federation organised under a constitution whereby free movement of people around the globe is guaranteed, since, let's face it, in places like the United States, Britain, and so on, and in European nations in general, we have people from all over the world here anyway. I imagine if we have this kind of, or work toward, have it, and just lower borders across the board, and would just have free movement. People can go live wherever they want, unimpeded, or have a global currency even, yeah. Like global dollar, global credit, I don't know what to call it exactly. I had the idea of recently parceling out the mineral resources of Titan at an equal stake for every man, woman, and child currently living, sort of ensure like a basic level of wealth for every human being, right? Sort of a stock portfolio, if you like, for every man, woman, and child that I guess would pay dividends over the course of their lifetimes. And it seems somewhat obvious. I think the kindest thing that can be said about the British Empire is that it sought global dominance in order to try and ultimately establish something like world peace. Like if we can have world peace, I think like it would be a very good thing. The murder of one's countrymen and women and children via the routine bombing and machine gunning of human beings over geopolitical tussles over things like natural resources, if it can be brought to an end in any way, I suggest it probably is via means like this. Since how can you unite behind the idea of a nation if, in essence, you're attacking a nation who's already full of the people from many other different nations, if you see what I mean? Like, say there's an emergent East Asian population in Belarus. If that situation manages to be, liberalised in terms of immigration and whatnot, then by attacking, say, Belarus, you're attacking like a population of East Asia, and like likewise, if there's like say it's Europe attacking Belarus, and well, the rest of Europe attacking Belarus, you're just like attacking your own people, and it's a little bit futile, isn't it? It's not so long ago, really, that we were having like wars with France, as Britain, like I'd say about like 30%, if not 50%, if not 60% of our population we can probably all trace at least some lineage at this point to the French. It's a little bit silly, no. But I mean, I guess like to a lot of people's mind, this is like very, very out there political thinking, doesn't it? It's like very, very abstract. But I think the reality of what we're facing now, like we're facing a very decentralized type and style of economics. I'd have said, like, the way we're likely going to be manufacturing things in the future, and actually the way we're more like manufacturing things now, very often is coming down. It's becoming more artisanal again, which is something I don't think a lot of people really foresaw even 30 or 40 years ago. So we're having like kind of a micro-industrial trend at the moment, and everything's kind of fracturing into individual little business fiefdoms. Like our traditional ideas of class are being attacked heavily, as the bourgeoisie in Europe and the United States and North America like really is expanding rapidly, and a great many people are becoming more like entrepreneurs and self-employed people are really sort of seeking those pathways through life rather than the traditional modes of either employment for big companies so much, or well, that really. I think that's becoming more and more what people want, or they want a style of life that doesn't entail a hierarchical structure and something oppressive, but more people want to work on what they want to work on in life. I suggest, like with the renewables technology that's available to us at the moment, that a lot more people could probably have a kind of little fiefdom of their own that is self-sustaining without too much trouble, and a kind of global basic income to back it up. And of course, we still need for certain projects established globally coordination of efforts and coordination of men, materials, labour, and so on. So if we're going to like have large scale projects like going to Mars and things like this, and like if we're going to do that, I think it makes a lot more sense to be united in that endeavour rather than divided, and be much more open to the prospect of sharing resources rather than seeking to limit our opposition and gain a foothold for ourselves that puts us as an advantage in comparison to a competing adversary, and to establish a kind of equanimity across the board, also enshrined in the Constitution, which should be based largely on, I guess, the raft of international legislation agreed upon in the United Nations. Yeah. So like that would be the jumping off point for it, and like it would have to be a kind of well, not rebranding as such, but a rethinking of the UN, right? Where it becomes like actually much more like a world government, and not a world government as such, but like a United States of planet Earth. That's like more what it would need to be, I think. With like, dare I say, like an elected global president or chancellor or something like this, like a Republic of Earth Republic. I like the idea of global federation. Of the chancellor of the federation, or the president of the federation, whatever. Do these details mean much actually? If it really comes down to it, or would the Security Council have to turn into a kind of like several federations forming yet another supranational organisation, maybe. Something like Northern Federation for the Northern Hemisphere, Eastern Federation for East Asia, and I guess what we call Oceania now. Right? A Southern American, Southern American African Federation. Is such a thing be envisaged? Or am I just talking bollocks? Someone on TikTok, if I put this on TikTok and do something like that probably would say, yes, you are talking bollocks. But why? It's like, we can like move to Africa now if we want. We can move anywhere on the planet if we want and have the money and have the visa and this, that, and the other, and passports, which even huge numbers of people in the United States don't have. So, like, there's kind of like this progressive trapping of people within their own countries, And we need, more than ever, I think, to get out of our own little bubbles and sort of explore the world and sort of realise that rather than being all that different and the world being a big scary alien place to, in the most part, except a little bit that you occupy, it should be more like, well, we are free to go anywhere we like. I've already got World Bank, so I want to give everyone a World Bank account, like with the money in it, the basic amount of money. I'd recommend not letting the poorest in the world's basic income, or their total income per annum, ever exceed 80% less than that of the richest 20%, and harmonise global income that way. And if you're really that bent on this dramatic gap between rich and poor, like, I think you probably misunderstood economics a little bit. Since inequality is a driver of inflation, which means that you widen the gap between rich and poor. Like, yeah, you get more money, but the money ends up being worth less. Whereas, like, you improve equality of income, like, you get deflation, but you don't get a deflationary spiral necessarily. I think you get a deflationary spiral when you totally flatten the income curve and say that everyone's income has to be exactly equal, which I'm not in favour of, and I don't think anyone is really in favour of that, or many people are. I certainly don't think it would work in practice. But like, this Pareto principle is still embedded in the way that our economic behaviour manifests. So I think it would be prudent to orchestrate the redistribution of income and preserve a meritocratic system under a system whereby the poorest, like, are never allowed to become too poor, the rich are never allowed to become too rich, and money is distributed automatically from the top to the bottom in terms of income, right? So the rich always maintain a consumer base for their products and, their innovations and so on and so forth, and likewise the poorest aren't forced to starve to death, and we can coordinate global, like, things I know that we're possible of now. I think it's like a bit beyond speculation in my mind, at least, that we're possible of it's possible actually now, I think, to have extraordinary productivity in things like agriculture, if we're to have, say, enormous vertical farms. And, like, what it was in the future, I don't know, vertical farms possibly covering very large areas of the planet, stretching to 10,000 feet into the sky. With our materials, like, we could build things like that. Build a 10,000 foot antenna, 4 of them enclosing a huge 3D cornfield, if we need to prove a concept like that. Like, I don't think there's any kind of demand for that at the moment, really. But maybe in the not so distant future, and if we're going to talk about not so distant, I think we may as well talk about, like, thousands of years. If we're going to talk about the sorts of civilizations that really are going to last forever and try to make this sort of thing happen, and sort of get out of this mode of competition. Not out of the mode of competition per se, but out of the mode of group competition. We can still be competitive in an individual sense, I think. So, the age of Kali Yuga hasn't ended entirely. But, competition, well, we're not going to end sports, are we? I don't think we're going to end competition in business either. And, I don't think I'd also advocate the abolition of nation states existing within federal bodies, within supranational organizations, right? So I'm not advocating, like, the total dissolution of national identity or anything like this, or even regional sovereignty, so long as that regional sovereignty can be mediated under systems that are democratic and regulated effectively by supranational organizations. So, for instance, like yeah, there must be free and fair elections guaranteed across the board, I think. And I think one nation that might bulk possibly at some ideas like this, for instance, China, saying like maybe they concede and say like, well, socialism certainly this seems to be. However, we are a communist nation and we're working towards communism, and a moneyless society and this sort of thing. And then you have to sort of I think engage on a level like with their own rationality and say like, well, you're moving towards a system of social credits, and like what it really amounts to at the moment, it seems to be a kind of a redefining of money, rather than a movement away from money at all towards a society where everyone just works for free. Everyone, produces something or produces to the best of their ability, and they're given whatever they want for free in life. And I don't think this ideology necessarily corresponds to anything practicable, at least in the foreseeable future. Since, say, you've got a lot of people doing similar sort of work or working as hard as one another and producing a similar amount of quality of produce at one level of society, and they all go to, restaurants to eat. But one restaurant in the area is a better restaurant than all the others. So this becomes the most desirable restaurant at which to eat at. How do you therefore determine who gets to eat at that given restaurant? You do it via like a nepotistic and slightly corrupt system, whereby people exchange favors more like to get into the restaurant that they like more, and then you kind of have the emergence of factionism and a kind of a different kind of social credit system mediated under or manifesting under the initial social credit system that was supposed to determine who gets to eat at which restaurant. And thereby do you have a kind of a clustering of people with a shared common interest around a good or service that's in high demand, and thereby you gain inequality. So well, maybe it could be done on a sort of first come first serve basis. But I think in the absence of money and in the absence of kind of a unit that isn't based on any kind of behavioural enforcement or system of judgment against behaviours, or against or it's based upon arbitrary criteria, should we say, and that's just given equally across the board, I think you gain something more like communism then, because then what you generate, like in addition to the moneyless bit, what communism must also entail is the classlessness element. So it's a system of social credits, though moving away from money, though it is, like you're in essence building a kind of different class system, and you're stratifying society along within behavioural dimensions or along behavioural dimensions. And so you can say that there's an underclass of people who are not adhering to the social credit system, right? And then you are also on the same level, denying these people accesses to certain premium goods and services if they should choose them, which I don't think is quite what Karl Marx had in mind when he wrote the Communist Manifesto. I think a society free of money, no society ever has been free of money. Well, maybe North Korea is, but I think in practice it does have money, or money changes hands within it, or money is a significant factor within its economy still. So it's somewhat, I think, beside the point possibly. And if I have these resources at all, like someone decides Titan's a free for all, I guess it is at the moment if I've given everyone an equal stake in it. I think I'd like to stand by that. I think it's the right thing to do with that given body. that celestial body. So is it a sort of commons? Is that, well, it's an organised commons then, isn't it? If everyone has an equal stake in it. But yeah, I've also taken the precaution of saying that the land itself is unsaleable, and that you must not sell it. I think the whole thing, I would insist, comes as a resource in and of itself. So, in essence, like there's one single share of this entity called Titan, and that is divided up into 7 billion or so individuated units which provide dividends which the holders of said shares may not sell or exchange. So they're only paid dividends. And if you're not able to sell something, I fail to see why you'd be able to borrow against it. Because what I don't want to emerge is a sort of a backstreet trade in stock on that moon with this huge wealth of hydrocarbon resources, and to thereafter have the emergence of an incredibly unfair and unequal system. So it will also remain to mediate this plan under the de facto control of the Outer Solar Empire, the OSE. And no decisions about it can be made without unanimous democratic decisions passed through the varying levels of the relevant jurisdictions, democratic elements of its democratic systems. Right. So, yeah, the varying councils and chambers of commons and nobles would have to agree upon a kind of confluence of opinion as to what to do with those resources. Say if we want to use it for the terraforming of Mars, that'd be probably a very good idea, I think. That'd be something I probably might argue for if they wanted to use it for that. Using it for Dyson sphere and solar arrays to make plastic. Yeah, again, possibly also, right. But as a basic requirement of that, returning all the royalties, the dividends, that is, exclusively, and in equal portions to the shareholders of this resource, i.e. everyone on the planet currently living, man, woman, and child. So I see a future that is less, an immediate future, I should say, that's less driven by factional competition and more like individual competition, but hopefully in a kind of a more respectful manner, and less of this scrabbling and squabbling, and less of this fighting hand over fist over every last little drop of gold to be wrung out of whatever it is, or out of the system, or every little bit of money. And a big part of that would be the effective redistribution of wealth between rich and poor, and a meritocratic system whereby everyone can kind of agree that most of the people getting to the top earning brackets in society, to the 20% who, beyond a certain point, will have to always redistribute their income back down to the lowest earning 20%. Sort of like hopefully ensuring like some kind of harmonized stability at a macroeconomic level. This microeconomic competition factor would become more respectful and less about the mere earning of money at all costs, like in unfettered and unregulated laissez-faire capitalism, and more like a truly liberal socialist state, or succession of liberal socialist states that values free trade, yet also recognises the importance of robust social institutions and the effective redistribution of wealth to effect a decent and reasonable level of economic inequality from which could then probably, I would imagine, for varying reasons, be used as the ideal jumping off point to promote social egalitarianism, and the the social institutions funded by this can thereby mediate um, uh, political equality, like absolute equality before the law. Yeah, like without any. Yeah, they in the political sense, like equalities ought to be absolute. You know, no vote should count for more than, no given person's vote should count for any more or less than any other person's vote. No person going through the justice system should ever, for whatever reason, wealth, gender, class, skin color, religion, or what have you, be denied a fair trial on the basis of any characteristic like that. All right, so or denied the use of social institutions, right? Or not be guaranteed the same protections and, as everyone else in society. That must be guaranteed at an absolute level, the political level, I think. But yeah, and at a social level, like an appreciation and sensitivity towards difference should probably be encouraged, but I don't think it should be by any means necessarily enforceable in law, unless it gets too extreme and abusive. And yeah, I think like doing it this way, or maybe we can even have like Bitcoin, the global currency. I don't know, like or have like Bitcoin become an element forming its nominal or actual value. I don't know, or like a cryptocurrency I'm advising for any number of the systems of the OSE, the Outer Solar Empire, which I think if we follow this sort of politics, this is just my opinion though, I think if we follow where this sort of politics would lead or could lead, I think it has a very good chance of us being able to get out to the outer solar system en masse for the first time in human history. That is my inclination to think that. And we could build, yes, far larger rockets, far larger machines in space, cities in space, possibly even. Cities on Mars. Fusion power in space is the ideal place for it. Eventually, fusion drives, taking us very, very fast to other star systems. And we've got the James Webb Space Telescope, as I've said many, many times before, pointed at other star systems now, looking for signs of life out there. I'm tempted to think also we may well find some life in this solar system, probably on the moons of Jupiter that have subsurface oceans. And in fact, probably not on Titan. So like that would not be an excuse to go there now, would it? And just bypass Jupiter. And I mean, honestly, what are you going to do with it? You're going to ship it back to Earth? Like, it'd be an impressive feat, I have to say, but it'd be a completely redundant one. And what could Russia do with? Since it is running out of gas and coal, or not coal really, but gas and oil it's certainly running out of. They would like an abundance of windmills and keep its coal. In the tundra, like, it has wind, I assume. Solar, wind. Possibly even we could do a lot more to generate energy here on Earth. Send energy to space, to Russia, and try this fusion idea in space. I think it's certainly worth trying. I think it's worth trying this more than it's worth trying yet another fusion experiment as large as the one they're building in France currently in ITER with CERN. So I think try this in space. It need only be a small reactor, and try sending some energy back to Earth. So I think up there in space, you have the room available to control these sorts of reactions. You can take advantage of low temperatures and the near perfect vacuum of space. and there's 5 hydrogen atoms per cubic centimeter. Like, I don't know how many atoms there are in my fingernail. Like, I don't quintillions, septillions. I don't know. Some insane number of atoms. No, a lot bigger than 5. I think if I stuck my like crumb of dust in a fusion reactor, I don't think it would do all that much. Let's say like 4 kilograms of tritium. So yeah, I think a calming down would be good. And like the sense that we could be fine. We really could be okay. But I think the first step is probably the inclusion of Russia. Should Vladimir Putin and the Russian people see it being in their interest, I think they probably would ultimately come down on that side. I think see that it would be in their interests, and I think eventually, like carry on like this, that they will be losing their properties in the United Kingdom, and I don't think it will help Russia at all. I don't think it's even going to help the richest of the rich in Russia, and like liberalizing the drug issue internationally. Yeah, I think it is a big thing that needs to happen, and that is very, very important, and it will save our economies in the West a hell of a lot of money. It will allow us to make a lot more money in all sorts of ways. Allow China to fix its agricultural issues with its overburdened and depleted soils, or its degraded soils. The phytoremediation of hemp and the soil repairing properties of it. Its ability to repair soil structure. We could maybe also experiment with, say, fungal hyphae, mycorrhizal networks, and things like this to try and beef up the soil health of those areas in China that are depleted more and more. Try and help them out with our engineers to irrigate those areas. Since sorry to say, but this South-North water transport system, like, it's all evaporating before it's getting to the north of China. That's the basic issue with it. Or that hasn't really been taken into account in quite as effectively as it ought to have been. And in any case, I don't think you can just chuck water on the soils and expect them to burst back into productivity. Like what agriculture has taught me, that isn't enough. It doesn't quite work like that. It's not quite that simple. But and we have to make the first move. I think as Britain, as this country, since we were so instrumental in making it illegal to begin with, and if we continue down this path, this erroneous path, this right now, and I mean like this now and here and now, if we continue doing this, this is our last chance, I think, to do this. We have no time left now to do this. It is the basis, in fact, of the environmental problems we're suffering from and for the sustainability issues we're suffering from. I think after this century of folly, we need to end this experiment with drug controls. The fact that it occurred internationally unleashed chaos and carnage and unmeasured, unprecedented destruction and bloodshed. So enough is enough, and this needs to end immediately. And we need to be big enough as a nation to put our pride to one side and admit that we were 100% totally crazy, wrong, and stupid for ever signing these agreements and laws into statute, right? And it stops immediately from now on. And we might just have a chance of a great and prosperous future for our species. It's not just we hold yet the fate of the world in our hands in doing this. Not just, it is a yes or no decision. No, we reject these laws. Or yes, we continue banning cannabis, banning green plants, an unprecedented decision in Christian nations, in history. Never been done before. Well, except by Napoleon Bonaparte, what was at the time, strictly speaking, not a Christian nation at that point. Guided by the goddess of reason, ostensibly. But things like trying to desperately reintroduce Roman Catholicism at the time. But and there's a kind of sneaky war effort to quickly raise money for ships, I expect. And enough. Yeah, this is offensive to our cultures. If for no other reason, we must do it for that reason. And draw a line under this craziness, this insanity that, we've been trying the same thing again and again, enforcing drug policy, more draconian, less draconian, but some controls nonetheless. It does not work. We've tested that hypothesis. It has been proven totally insubstantial. It does not hold up to scrutiny. It doesn't hold up to logic or, if we're to have any integrity, if we're to, sincerely push forward with any kind of robust moral principles underpinning our nations, such as the International Declaration of Human Rights, for instance, we're going to take that seriously. We cannot keep doing this. We're not going to take things like that seriously. I shudder to think what will happen. I really do. And this must end. It does not work. We know this now. It doesn't even make the rich richer. It makes everybody poorer. It introduces a brutal form of oppression and injustice. And lowers ourselves from being supposedly intelligent, enlightened, self-respecting people, and respectful people of other people's traditions and things like this, and other people's bodily autonomy, and the right to choose what we do with our own lives, our own selves, and the right to take seriously concepts such as self-ownership, and not to be told what we may or may not do, and may or may not consume by the state, as though we're children or chattels or what have you. And we do like adults with dignity, pride, and self-respect. And we do this, for those things, for our dignity, do this, right? So we draw a line under it, and we issue wheedling, grovelling apologies to every nation we, in essence, coerced into doing this also, or in fact coerced into doing it also, and step back and put ourselves at their mercy, right? And see how we're repaid. But if we continue doing this, if we continue down this path, it will end in our destruction. Our destruction of everything we purported to stand for. And every mode of invention, every principle of freedoms, freedom of inquiry, belief, Yeah, freedom of belief, allowed to believe what we like, adhere to which religion we like, and the principles of that religion, right? Craziness, utter craziness. And yes, it must cease. At all costs. Now.